Our next speaker is Alexander from law firm Yust. I think that it's very interesting to see the current legislatory requirements with regards to what's required to be disclosed, and I guess we can move from this to what to the marketing itself, right? Because maybe sometimes marketing within GIPS is kind of regulated. What's the regulation requirement on this in Russia currently? I think that would be my first question.
Okay, yeah. I apologize. I have no entertainment, only those TVs. The law is always boring. That was a joke, of course. As per your question, Pierre, I would say that there are several acts, as you know, governing the industry, and I'd like to mention the following. According to such acts, there are certain requirements to management companies of investment funds, its shareholders, and governing bodies. There are also specific disclosure duties of such companies. Besides, these acts prohibit management companies to make certain transactions. For example, it is prohibited to transfer assets of investment funds without consideration or without compensation. Okay. More than that, it is prohibited to acquire pledged assets. For example, there are some other limitations on transactions. In accordance with the federal law on investment funds, any data being distributed or disclosed by a management company cannot contain false or misleading information, statements related to unconfirmed skills of such company, or connections with state authorities. In contrast, individual investment is governed by general provisions of the federal law on securities market, a few regulations, and a contract for asset management, which is concluded in accordance with the Civil Code of the Russian Federation. Of course, it doesn't mean that individual investors are not protected. No, but comparing to collective investors, their position is more weak. The consequence of this regulation gap between collective investment and individual investment is that collective investors are more confident than individual ones. So there is a regulation of the industry, but collective investment is more regulated than individual investment.
Like for example, if we take the calculation of performance or something, is it possible? I mean, in terms of pure, calculation methodologies, the way you apply it, the way you do it, can really affect, and the way you present it can affect the way you can attract money, the way you position yourself within the industry. So this, if in terms of CFA, it's very strictly bounded, so you cannot really play around with it, right? In terms of current regulation, and especially in terms of discretionary asset management, is it possible to deviate and play around the numbers?
Well, there are thousands of laws in Russia, of course. Russian regulation deal with it. I mean that the Russian legislation is rather tough in this respect, and there are two main acts apart from the criminal code of the Russian Federation. These are the federal law on protection on competition protection and the federal law on advertising. So, according to the federal law on competition protection, unfair marketing or fraud, including distribution of false, inaccurate, or corrupted information, could be qualified as unfair competition. Then, unfair competitor can be fined up to 500,000 rubles. According to the second act, the federal law on advertising, a management company cannot distribute information on its performance results, which is not based on performance results calculated in accordance with regulation of Bank of Russia. If a company violates it, then it can be fined up to 1 million rubles. So these are two legal consequences, and there is another one. If a management company violates legislation or regulations twice or more within a year, Bank of Russia may cancel its license.
Stop scaring us. I'm
Yeah,
listening to this.
these are legal consequences of unfair marketing.
But what's the, I mean, unfair marketing, it means that if you show, you know, I made 100% last month or something when you didn't, this is obviously a fraud, right?
Yeah,
But if you
fraud.
calculate it according to the, you know, approved set of initial guidance according to the central bank, this guidance is not as strict as the CFA, right? That's what I'm trying to understand, or is it?
Yeah, Russian regulation provide only general rules for calculating of performance results. So, which lead to that management companies can calculate their performance results in a way advantages for them, but being within the framework of
Right.
regulation. So that is why it's, despite existing tough regulation, it is very difficult to prove unfair marketing or bring a management company to responsibility for misrepresentation on performance results. Unfair marketing, I would say that unfair marketing is a crucial issue not only for clients, but also for honest management companies because their unfair competitors take potential clients from the market cheating using unfair marketing.
Basically legal, you know, legal tools within the framework to do it. Yeah.
So I would say that there are examples of unfair marketing in Russia. You've probably heard about Troika Dialog case and Eurotrust case, but they do not relate to performance results. Troika, as I remember, provided misleading information on its services, and Eurotrust disclosed false accounting information. In contrast, in the United States of America, rather recently, there were two cases related to unfair marketing and GIPS and performance results directly. The first was ZPR investment management case. ZPR stated that it complied with GIPS, but that was not true. So result was that ZPR and its founder were fined for $900,000, and the founder was also barred from the industry. The second case was Lockheed Capital Management case. Lockheed failed to comply with GIPS, but misrepresented on that. So the result was fine in the amount of $3.5 million, and Lockheed was also barred from the industry. Well, considering our current regulation on unfair marketing, I would say that it is not necessary to tighten it, to make it, to tighten responsibility through additional fines or else. What shall we do is to make existing mechanism working. And in order to do so, we shall implement GIPS, I suppose.
Yeah, well, hopefully. I mean, like we discussed previously, as far as I know, where Ficifera was in charge of regulation 10 years ago or so, they were very keen on incorporating GIPS. And now the central bank has lost the space for, I don't know, whatever the reason is.
No idea.
So, you know, to sum it up, as I see it in Russia, either since there are no really cases around that, I assume in the United States it's quite frequently when somebody tries to violate, you know, he gets caught quite frequently. But in Russia, for the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, we have that happening often. It means that either nobody violates, or the rules are so that, you know, you can play around with data and you're not caught. So I'm not really sure what was the answer for this.
Well, I think nobody wants to be fraud in terms of the criminal code of the Russian Federation, but management companies have a lot of discretion within the framework, within the existing framework. That is why I suppose we have not much cases right now.
Okay, yeah. Scared enough? Somebody wants to cheat? Think not. Yeah, and perhaps a few words on the, maybe somebody's, I guess, interested in what's coming in the
Yeah.
regulatory environment in Russia.
Well, there is a bill in the State Duma now on self-regulatory organization in financial market. And according to the bill, participants of financial markets, including management companies, shall become members of such self-regulatory organizations. Such self-regulatory organizations shall have their own standards and will supervise over its members, while Bank of Russia will supervise over such self-regulatory organizations. The bill was already adopted in the first reading in State Duma. It was December or January, something like that. I'm also aware that further to the bill, there is another bill being developed now. It relates to financial consultants, including, of course, management companies. The bill specifies general requirements to financial consultants in terms of education, in terms of experience, etc. And in accordance with the bill, there should be two types of standards: federal standards adopted by Bank of Russia and local standards adopted by self-regulatory organizations.
Market has to, I guess, take it as it is, with the market forces, and then perhaps we can go ahead with incorporation this into legislation. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you.